Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of the Black Spinner Music Podcast with Andy Rodriguez and Al Horta. What's going on, Al?
Hey, what's up? How are you, man?
Oh,
Doing well.
I'm doing pretty good, man. Today we got a really good episode. Today we got an episode that was chosen by Joseph Staub. He reached out to me and said, "Hey, why don't we do this? Why don't we do top 10 concept albums of the 1970s?" We did one. If y'all want to check it out, back for the 1990s. So so he said that was so much fun. Let's do 1970s. So so here we are. Hey Joe, tell us why you want to do this one.
Yeah, so like you said, a couple months ago, we did the top 10 concept albums of the 90s, and that was a great show to do. And we talked about some really kind of concept albums we wouldn't really talk about too often because that seems to be like a decade that kind of gets pushed under the rug sometimes when it comes to concept albums. So I was doing that, and then Andy and I both did a show on the Freeform Rock podcast on an album that I'm sure both of us will be talking about on this list tonight. So I think I've been kind of just in a 70s concept album kind of mode lately. And so I just reached out to Andy. I said, hey, we did the 90s. Now we got to do the 70s, the era of the concept album.
Yeah.
So I just kind of said, hey, let's do this. And we kind of went from there. And so I've been listening to a bunch of these albums, and it's been great diving into some of these again.
All right, and joining us once again is Jimmy James Swartz. What's going on, Jimmy?
Not much. Sorry, I got my Central and Eastern time mixed up. I thought we were starting Central. I got confused, so my apologies for showing up late.
That's all right.
Not a whole heck of a lot. We're just trying to weather the cold stuff up here in the Northeast, and you know,
Oh yeah.
insurance, kids, and records. That's what's going on.
Yeah, it's the same here, except minus the kids, pets, and my great cat here is blocking one of my lights. He's sitting like right in front of it. That's why it's kind of dark because he's sitting in front of it.
Oh, that's funny.
Over here. And of course, our co-host Al. What's up, Al?
Not man, just trying to show. Or we're streaming live on Be Cool Be Podcast out on YouTube, so I'm trying to share it on Facebook and stuff. But no, everything's good, man. Just been working my ass off this week. I pulled like 2 11-hour days, Monday and Tuesday. Today was a little bit easier, which thank God it was. So kind of a little more of a laid back day. So I'm energized. I'm ready to tackle this. God only knows like what other decade we're gonna tackle a concept after this one. Since we did 90s, now we're doing 70s. You know,
I don't know.
Concept is coming up.
I don't know if we can make a list of 10 80s concept albums. If I'm being honest.
Oh, you can.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can name like 5 off the bat, but I'd have to look.
And they're all Marillion, probably.
Well, they really don't.
Well, you got Strike, you got Fates. Well, Fates Warning.
Fates Warning didn't have any in the 80s.
Till 90, yeah. Till 90s. Yeah, you have to really think about it, but there are plenty of concept albums of the 80s.
But once you start digging and digging,
yeah.
You know, my list would probably be older.
Yeah. I was going to say that.
Look up on the top of my shelf up there.
I can't see what is it.
Mindcrime.
Oh yeah, that'd probably be like top. That'd be probably the top of most of people's list.
Yeah, that's why it's displayed in a place of prominence in my home.
Yeah. I've always heard that Madonna's Like a Virgin is a concept album. So
I'd love to know what the concept is.
Well, she kind of showed that out in the 90s.
Oh, yeah, that movie. Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah. All right, guys. So we're going to go around the horn and share what's spinning. So what have you been listening to, Joe?
Well, Al kind of just spoiled what I've been listening to, but Jimmy knows where I'm going with this because
I know.
He and I have been having endless conversations over the last few days about it, but I have been really diving into the live side of Marillion's discography. And Marillion was a band that we talked about on the a couple episodes we've done on here, and they're a band that releases a shit ton of live albums. They have their own record label for the express purpose of releasing live albums. So I have started to amass a collection of Merlion's live albums, and 3 that I've been listening to a lot recently are their last 3 that they put out. These 2 feature actually complete live performances of their last 2 studio albums, and I really think that they pull them off live even better than in the studio. I think that they really the songs come alive in this live setting, and so these are 2 really great live albums, and they add some string and horn sections to their performances, plus some really great kind of hits and deep tracks as part of the encores. So these are both multi-disc sets. And then this one as well, where it's like a little bit of a mix, but also with the added string and horn sections. They released a studio album a few years ago where they added some strings and horns to some of their classic songs. And then they did a tour where they did that live. So these are their kind of their last 3 major release live albums. They also had some on their record label that I have coming soon. But I've been really kind of listening to a lot of their live stuff lately. So if anything that we've talked about Marillion, I know several of us on this show have talked about Marillion before, prog, but in a different sense than we usually talk about prog. Especially this kind of era is a little bit more kind of British, kind of I don't even know how you would describe it.
I would almost cinematic in a certain way.
Cinematic, yeah. I've heard them compared to like Radiohead, Coldplay, U2. Like you smash all of them together, and they kind of have that plus some of the classic prog aspects as well. But their last few albums have just been phenomenal, and then these all feature live performances of those albums, and it's just absolutely amazing.
Well, that's Marillion you're talking about, right?
Yep.
What's the live albums you're holding up there?
The last 3 that they just put out. This one that just came out last year. It is their last studio album, An Hour Before It's Dark, in its entirety, plus some other tracks. They do. This one was recorded. They do what's called Marillion Weekends, which is every 2 years or so. They do these big festivals all over the world where they basically have a whole weekend where they just do concerts every day, and each night it's a different set. So they'll usually do like 3 concerts a weekend.
Yeah.
And what they usually do is each night it's either like a theme. Their set list is either a theme or they play one of their entire albums in full plus some other songs. And that's where a lot of their live albums come from, is from those festivals. So this one was recorded in 2023. It's their last album. This one was called With Friends at St. David's. It's when they did the tour for their orchestra album a couple years ago. And then this one is probably my favorite. It's called All One Tonight. It was recorded live at the Royal Albert Hall in 2017. It includes disc 1 is a live performance of the entire Fear album. And then disc 2 is all like some of their bigger hits and kind of favorite tracks of the Steve Hogarth era with an orchestra behind it. So it's like they have like, what'd you say, Al?
The first time I ever, the first and only time I ever saw him live was on that Fear tour.
Mm-hmm.
They played it because they
that was one of the only times they toured America.
Yeah,
recently.
Yeah. Before that, I went to a I don't know if I ever talked about. I went to a Steve Rothery like a clinic. He had a clinic in New York City. He came over by himself, but he had like a where he talked about like his guitars. He played some. He talked about like you know writing songs, all that stuff. It was really cool, dude. Like I got to pull the tape out because I recorded that like when I was there.
That'd be great to see.
Actually, it's audio. I didn't have it, but yeah, I would. And I got to meet him. It was really cool. I got a picture me and him. It was not on a cell phone. It was on like I brought like an actual camera with me, so I got to pull it off the card and put it up on on Facebook on my who I've met and shit. Brushes with Fame, shit that I always post up. But yeah, no, it was cool to meet him, and he was really cool. And And then like it was a during the day thing. It was at like this cool like cafe in like New York, man, in Manhattan, you know. And then at night they had like a thing during the day like where you talked. And at night they had a jam session, but I left because I had somewhere to go that night, like a family thing, so I couldn't stay for the jam session. So I kind of wish I could have stuck around for that, but it was cool, like, you know, just to hear him talk about. And he was just playing like some of the guitars, how he comes up with parts of songs, and you know, things like that. It was really awesome, man. So that's like the first time I saw somewhat of like Marillion because I'd never seen it before, and I was like, I couldn't pass this chance up. But then when they announced that they were coming over to New York to play a concert, I went to that. Ironically, when they played, it was on election day when Donald Trump first got elected into office. So, needless to say, when I left, it was a lot of protesting going on and shit. So it was pretty funny. But I remember they made a joke. I remember they made a joke or something like, you know, Art, who's the drummer from Marillion?
Ian Mosley.
Ian Mosley. Like, we should elect Ian Mosley for president or something like that. You know, it was pretty.
He I think it was in this concert, which was recorded a couple months later. The back of his shirt says Ian Mosley for president.
Oh, that's funny.
Because I have the DVD as well.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure the back of his shirt says Ian Mosley for president.
They came over again for the next album. What was the album after the Fear?
Afraid of Sunlight.
Well, no. An hour before it's dark.
Huh?
An hour before it's dark.
That one. They came over again, and I missed them. I didn't go to it, man. I wish I did. But yeah, they played in New York City again. But to this date, I've only seen them live once. So I'd love to see them again, man. If they came down to Florida, I'd go there in a second. I'd even try.
Yeah. If they come anywhere on the East Coast, like Northeast, I'm going to see them.
I'd even travel a couple hours to go check them out, you know, because they very rarely come over here, you know. So
yeah, I think your best bet is the cruise to the edge kind of thing, which I have no interest in.
That or they always do. If anyone is interested in going to Canada these days, they do one of their weekends in Montreal. That's the only North American one that they do is in Montreal.
Marillion weekends, yeah.
So they don't tour here much, Marillion?
No, they don't, man. They don't.
They did a decent amount in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, but then
they got major label kind of. They weren't on a major label anymore, so they didn't get a lot of that kind of
support.
Because they toured with Rush in the 80s.
Yeah, they opened for Rush before Rush. They did that 5 run at Radio City Music Hall before. It was like a pre kind of Grace Under Pressure. It was before the album was out, but they previewed a couple of songs. They opened and notoriously they got booed like big time. Like, and I scratched my head. I'm like, dude, Marillion would be a great opener for like Rush. I don't understand.
Yeah.
At that time, Fish was like doing the whole kind of Peter Gabriel, like, you know.
Well, yeah, because that would have been like that was like
the first album.
Yeah, like between the first album and Fugazi, which he was doing like the makeup and the costumes and stuff.
And I would have figured like Rush fans would have like embraced that, but no, man, like I don't get it, man.
It might have been an American thing, honestly, because they never really broke big in America.
And they were probably because they weren't known and things like that. So
yeah,
you know. And then they opened up again for Rush on the Power Windows tour. So, but
has that been Misplaced Childhood?
85, 86.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think they fared a bit better on that tour because they were already known.
Probably because that would have been right when Kaylee and Lavender were coming out. And
so I think they had some they had some some traction, in the U.S. by then. So, but Kayla was really the only hit they ever really had.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I remember seeing her on MTV, man. I thought it was a really beautiful song.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
All right, Jimmy, what have you been spinning, man?
All right. So today, I'm just going to go with what I've been playing today. Yeah. And this morning, my 5-year-old, she loves to dance. So I put on one of my favorite live records that never gets talked about enough. And that's Jay Giles' band, Blow Your Face Off.
Oh, yeah.
And talk about just people said that Jay Giles' band in their prime may have been the best live band of all time.
I wrote that before, yeah.
And it comes across on that record. Like, it just sounds like a party. Like, you drop the needle and it's immediately a party. And sorry, Paul Stanley, but it has the best stage rap of all time on Must Have Got Lost. You know, his whole it's just hilarious. But then you have those comfort albums. While I was working, I put on one of those for me, and it's Chicago too. And there's just
Love that
something
album.
there's something so warm and comforting about that music. I can't put my finger on it. It's just some of the best music ever made, and some of the best musicians ever put together. I'm not a big horn section guy, but man, it works with Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And you missed it when it wasn't there in the '80s. So that's kind of been my my rotation today. You know, the whole Girl from Buchanan suite is just, it's brilliant. You know, make
that
me
was
smile.
the highlight of when I saw them live last year, was them doing that the whole ballet for a Girl in Buchanan.
Yeah, that's unbelievable, and I could see how that would be. So, yeah, that's what's been going today.
Yeah, I think that's on also on Chicago 4, which is their live set from
Mm-hmm. The Carnegie Hall.
Carnegie.
Hall. Yeah, I got
Yeah.
that on cassette because I traded the vinyl away for something I don't even remember. Then I find it all on cassette.
The CD of that is a absolute bitch to try to find.
Really?
Okay.
Yeah, it's next to impossible to find. Plus, then they put an extended version out, because it was originally like a 4-album set,
Yeah.
and then they extended
4
it to
vinyl.
like a 4 or 5 disc set on CD.
Damn.
Of like basically every song they played during that residency.
Okay.
Mhm.
And that you can't find for less than a couple $100.
Oh wow.
Well, didn't they put out the set with the entire, like, all of
Yeah.
the shows that they did
Yeah.
at Carnegie at that
They did
run?
that, yeah,
which
they
was
did that too, which is like a 16 CD set or something like that.
pretty significant.
Yeah.
Wow, that's overkill. Come on.
They also just put out that last year they put out a set from around the same time, actually a little earlier, I think, right before Chicago 3 came out, I think. No,
Mhm.
or before Chicago 5 came out.
Mhm.
At the Kennedy Center.
That's right.
And that has really great sound quality on it, which has always been the big complaint about Carnegie Hall, is that the sound quality is atrocious. That,
Yeah.
like, even the band hated it. Like, it wasn't recorded well.
Well, they even said the acoustics in Carnegie were not fit for the
awful. Yeah.
the volume that they were playing at.
They've always preferred, they released like a Japanese live album from that same tour that they preferred, like the band preferred, but it didn't have nearly the same amount of tracks on it. So like everyone always kind of went back to Carnegie because they had so many songs on it. But then they just put out like a 3-disc live album from around that same time, like last year, that was at the Kennedy Center. It was the first show they ever performed Saturday in the Park.
Okay.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, check that out.
Because it was before Chicago 5 came out.
Okay. That's a great set.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen 2 shows at Carnegie Hall. I saw Foreigner do an acoustic concert there. That sounded great. I thought it sounded awesome, and
I feel like that would be something that the acoustics would be really good for.
It sounded phenomenal. And then I saw Beach Boys there as well.
Mm-hmm.
That was the night before we went to go see the Beach Boys. We went to go eat across the street at an Irish place, and sitting a couple of tables over, it was Morrissey.
Oh wow,
dude!
Oh wow!
And I wasn't approaching him or anything like that because I heard he could be a complete piece of shit, asshole. Yeah. So I was with my daughter, my wife, and everything, so I wasn't, but it was funny because I went. It was me, my daughter, my wife, and my friend Brian. It was the 4 of us, and we were waiting for our table. So Brian and I were sitting at the bar, and I'm facing him, and then he texted me, because I guess he didn't want to say. He's like, "Don't look now, but behind you, I think that's Morrissey sitting at that table." Because when you walked into the Irish place, right to the right, and it was like a corner table, like right there, where he was. It was almost kind of like if you walked in, you didn't see it unless you really like looked to the right. So I nonchalantly like just kind of turned around like to go talk to my wife, and I kind of just glanced over, and it was him. It looked like him, man. I was like, nah, dude, that can't be him. It's just somebody that looks like him and shit. So when we got our table, we were looking at his tour dates, and he had just got done. His last concert of his tour was two nights ago in Boston.
Huh.
So I was like, wow, dude. I mean, and I was thinking maybe he's going to see a Beach Boys. Who knows, man? He might like them.
I could see it.
I don't know, but I didn't see him in the venue or anything. Like, so I think he kind of got the sense that like my friend Brian kind of spotted him because he kind of looked, he just looked like he was kind of uncomfortable. You know what I mean? So when he got up to go to when we were at our table, I was trying to get a picture of him, but I couldn't because we were like our table was like against the wall, so was his, and there was like two tables separating us. So there was no way, and there was people sitting there, and there was no way like I was gonna try to snap a picture of him, and I just wasn't successful. He did get up to go to the bathroom, and one of his entourage bandmates or something walked with him, and like I was on my phone, and when he was coming back, man, the guy was like giving me like the look, man, like would you fucking dare take a picture of him or something like that. Like, I didn't even have my phone up like that. And he was just like kind of staring me down. Like he knew, like probably like that I knew that it was him. But I didn't care. I wasn't gonna walk up to him. I would leave the guy alone. I should have walked up to him and said, "How's your steak, sir?"
And they were probably saying,
You would have been pissed, man.
That's Al Horta. He's going to want to take a picture with you. That's Al Horta.
Anyway, so that was the times I went to Carnegie Hall, and they both sounded great. So maybe for high volume, maybe it's not good.
It also might just be that it doesn't record well. It might sound fine when you're there, but it just doesn't record well. Because like think of how many times
played there. Everybody's like, a lot of people.
I think they specifically mentioned the horns, that the horns didn't.
Probably was too
something about that. Yeah, the brass didn't.
Anyway,
pick up well.
Anyway, what I've been listening to last week, we were on Rat Salad Review. We were talking about unplugs, and then one of my unplugs that I really liked was the Queensryche one. I was talking about that. So I kind of been playing like Rage for Order lately, and I got like this deluxe version of Empire. That has like two. It's got like the album, and then it's got the live in Hammersmith Odeon in 1990. November 5th, 1990. So I've been kind of spinning this, and then the absence of presence because I went to go see Kansas on Sunday. They played here again. I saw them last year, and then they came back. The set was a bit short, and it was just more. They didn't play any newer stuff. It was just more geared on the hits, and they did like kind of some deep cuts, but they did like Song of America, things like that. Like some epics. But it was only like an hour and a half, whereas the last concert, I remember it was shy over like 2 hours, so they kind of shortened it a bit. But he still sounded phenomenal. Phil Ehart is not playing with them now; he's only managing them. But I was lucky when I saw him last year; he did play half the set, and I did see Steve Morris last year, which was awesome. He played with them, but this time it was just kind of a little more. It was at the Hard Rock here in Tampa. Nice, intimate, like theater. It sounded great. I mean, you guys can go on my channel. I recorded the whole show on there.
Nice.
So sounds really cool. And then I was at a thrift shop, and I found this album, man. And I was like, this looks like interesting. It's a band called Shakin' Street. This guy has a girl on cover. So I turned around, I looked on the back, I looked at the credits of who is in the band, and lo and behold, Ross the Boss is like the lead guitar player here, And I'm like, that's interesting. I never heard of this band. Ross the Boss was in the Dictators, and obviously he went on to Manowar. But this came out in 1980, so I guess it was in between the Dictators and Manowar. So he did. I looked up this band, and it was just this one album, and I was playing it. It's actually pretty cool, hard rock, and kind of a little bit punkish, but kind of Runaways-ish a little bit, like a little punk and hard rock kind of mix, man.
What year is it?
1980.
Oh wow!
So it's really cool, man. Some cool some cool riffs from like Ross the Boss and stuff. Man. I thought it was pretty good, man. And I like the way the girl sings on here. Her name is Fabian Shine. So I had never heard his band before, but I mean, shit, for like $3, man, I picked it up. And it's a white label promo. It's like flawless, man. It's like almost like nobody played it. You know, it's got the
you kind of a cover of an album and go from there if you want to get. Do you know what I mean?
was
Sometimes
that
cover. Sometimes
yeah?
the
Like I
cover of the
saw.
album
I mean,
will give away what it might sound like. You know.
I mean, when you go into thrift stores, you're usually thumbing through all this shit that's the usual record thrift store fodder, you know, the
Yeah.
usual
Easy listening and
Lawrence
that kind
Welk
of
fucking
yeah.
album. But then like I was thumbing, I saw this, and I'm like, well that looks interesting. And so I turned it around and I saw that. It had a promotional label on here, Gold Stamp Promotion. And then I saw Ross the Boss. I'm like, fuck it, dude. I'll get it for $3. Just check it out. And it's actually pretty damn good. So I don't know, try it out. Shaking Street. If you like kind of like that kind of late 70s, early 80s, kind of like, kind of like a hard rock with a little bit of a punk thing to it, it's really good. So yeah, that's what I've been saying.
Cool. I've just been spinning a couple of things. Starting off with, I'm already starting to look into our next week's topic, and so I've been spinning the Doobie Brothers, The Captain and Me. It's a really good album. I love
Yeah.
it,
Oh yeah.
and I'm not really that big on Doobie Brothers, but it's a good thing. If you don't dig a band that much, don't don't trade it or give it away or nothing like that. Because maybe one day
It
you
clicks
might
for you.
enjoy it, and that's how I felt about this one.
Is that the one with brown eyed? Is it brown eyed Cajun woman
Yeah,
or
it
dark
does.
eyed Cajun woman?
Yeah,
That's a
it's
great song.
it's a it's a brown-eyed Cajun woman,
Yeah, it's such a good song.
and this one here, I haven't heard this in a while. I really loved it the first time I heard it. I was really surprised surprised when I heard it because when everybody thinks of Joe Walsh, they think of Guitar Hero, this and that. But seriously, folks, it's so good. The songwriting, the wistful lyrics on this, the music is really good. If you're looking for guitar heroics, you're not going to find it here, but you're going to find a really good warm album, just like Jimmy was saying earlier, a comfort album. That's what this one is. It really is. I enjoyed it. And then I think I spoke about this one the last time, but I've still been listening to John McLaughlin Devotion.
Nice.
I'm still listening to this guy. Ever since I started hearing him, I've been really enjoying him. So that's been by my side for a while now. All right, guys, let's tackle the task at hand. We are doing our top 10 concept albums of the 1970s. This topic is being brought to the Black Spinner Circle by Mr. Joseph Staub. So he will start off. We're going to go three. We're going to do first three, and then three, and then we'll finish with one. So we'll go 10, 9, 8, and then that's so on. All of us are very familiar with that. We've all done it. So go for it, Joseph. What's your 10, 9, 8?
All right, at number 10, I have one. Andy and I were talking before we went on the air about like albums that we didn't realize or kind of forgot were concept albums, and my number 10 is definitely that. And it's one there was two albums in contention for my list that had the concept was a Western theme. One of them is on my honorable mentions, one of them is my number 10. I'll get to the one that's on my honorable mentions when we get there, but my number 10 is Desperado by the Eagles. Of course, everyone knows the song Desperado. It's one of their biggest hits, one of my favorite Eagles songs. Tequila Sunrise is on here. Jewel and Dalton, Out of Control, Certain Kind of Fool, Outlaw Man, Saturday Night. All songs based around kind of the idea of kind of an outlaw. Like that was kind of what the theme of the album was. Outlaws, particularly in the Old West.
Yeah.
Of course, the kind of cover artwork leads you to believe that it has that kind of theme to it. On the back, it has a picture of similar kind of theme. But yeah, so really, really great album. Has probably the most country of their early albums. Definitely has more of a country edge to it.
Yeah.
But just a really, really great album. Probably the most underrated. A lot of people go to their later few albums. This is one that I always go back to quite a bit. Just with the overall theme and the songwriting on this. Just a great. So that's my number 10 is the Eagles' Desperado. Number 9. What a way to start off a solo career. He never topped it. Alice Cooper, Welcome to My Nightmare. The song Welcome to My Nightmare, The Black Widow is one of my favorite Alice Cooper songs. Some Folks is just a great kind of adds these horns in and stuff. It's just really, really great. Only Women Bleed is one of his best ballads. Cold Ethel's fun. Steven is just this kind of epic track. This is one of those albums where a lot of these albums that we're going to talk about, at least on my list, are ones where I don't quite know what's going on in the story. But usually it's nothing good that's happening. Let's just put it that way. There's some weird, bad shit going on, and this one is this one kind of follows that theme. So my number 9 is Welcome to My Nightmare by Alice Cooper.
You know what? That album always reminds me so much of School's Out. You know, when people think of School's Out, they just think of the theme song. But when you think of the album, School's Out, it's a freaking weird album, dude.
It is.
It's like it goes in so many different directions. And that's what his later albums remind me of. They're just I mean it's hard to they're good, but they're not like his early albums where they were just rock albums from beginning to end. Here he takes so many detours, and I'll talk about that later. But keep going.
So that's my number 9, and then my number 8 is an album that Andy will probably scoff at because I know he's not a huge fan of this band, and neither am I in most senses. But this is an album that I do really enjoy by them. It's probably one of the only albums that I really enjoy by them, and that is "Thick as a Brick" by Jethro Tull. This is really, to me, one of the only times that their formula really works for me, because this album is meant to be absurd. This album is meant to kind of lampoon the concept album as a genre. If you read any kind of interviews with the band, they talk about how critics mislabeled Aqualung as a concept album. And so they're like, oh, that wasn't a concept album. But if you want a concept album, we'll give you a concept album. So they wrote this. It's each side is basically a full song. Different CDs will break it up into different tracks and stuff. But it was written, all the lyrics were written under a pseudonym of a 12-year-old boy or something like that. And so it's just really this kind of absurdist kind of thing where it's really not talking about anything. The lyrics are all kind of really don't make much sense. But I really think this is one of the few times where their music style, to me, really gels into a cohesive album. A lot of times there's songs I really like by Jethro Tull, but I can never really sit down and listen to an entire album aside from this one. This one I really do enjoy quite a bit. And I love how it kind of goes back and forth in styles a little bit, because the album opens with the kind of minstrel style that people kind of generally think of when they think of Jethro Tull, the flutes and the kind of the forest nymphs dancing along.
Yeah.
And then it gets pretty heavy at points in this album. But I really just enjoy this album a lot. Again, this definitely falls into the theme of really not about much of anything, but it's a concept. The concept is that it's not about much of anything. So that's my 10, 9, and 8 is Desperado, Welcome to My Nightmare, and Thick as a Brick.
It's not that I don't like Jethro Tull. I've tried so many times.
Me too. If I'm being honest, I have a lot of those CDs. I don't listen to them very much.
I got Passion Play and a whole bunch of other ones, and I used to have
The hell is that?
but a lot of those I just traded away or whatever. All right, Jimmy, what's your 1098?
All right. So I was looking at my list, and I have 3 albums in this spot that could not be any more different um, than if they were just from completely different planets. And you might even argue that the first one is from a completely different planet. So the basis behind my number 10 is you have your villain who is Sir Nose devoid of funk.
Hmm.
And you know where I'm going with this, Joe.
Yep.
your your protagonist is the purveyor of funk, and the only way to get Sir Nose devoid of funk into the funk is to shoot him with the bop gun. And if you don't know where I'm going, it's the one and only Parliament, and I'm going to mess up the name because I mess it up every time. It's Funkin' Teleki and the placebo syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
This album is so iconic. I don't think you would have Dr. Dre's Chronic album without this album, because I'm pretty sure about 90% of the music
was lifted.
was lifted, if not from this album, either album that's on the other side of it. I mean, there's been so many hip hop samples from this, but man, talk about a fun record. It just, I mean, it's a party whenever George Clinton is involved. And I can't remember the name of the vocalist who was on there, but man, that guy has such a great voice, a great soulful voice. And you mix it with the funk, the groove. It's just iconic. And unfortunately, I don't have a physical copy of it. Hopefully that'll come up soon. Now, for something completely different, I'm going to go with what I think is one of the greatest country albums ever made, and one of the few country albums that I know is a true concept album, and it's Willie Nelson, The Redheaded Stranger, and it's The Time of the Preacher. The whole story of the preacher who catches his wife with another man and proceeds to send them into eternity, and from there deals with the repercussion of what he's going through. And I mean, you've got Blue Eyes Crying in the Rain. Some of Willie's most iconic moments are on that record, and it's one of the records that made me fall in love with country music. And I know I don't talk about it a lot on here, but Willie transcends the genre. And you talk about a guitar player. I mean, if you listen to the stuff he plays, it's borderline jazzy. It's yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So for my number 7 or 8. 8. Thank you. I'm tired. Been dealing with numbers all day. Number 8 is going to be one of my prog bands, kind of in that second tier of prog music, and it's really a loose concept. It's a concept where each song is about one of the members of the band. And talk about great guitar players again. It is Camel and Moon Madness. And if you're not familiar with Camel, Andy Latimer, we were talking about Steve Roth earlier. His 3 main influences are David Gilmour, Steve Hackett, and Andy Latimer. So he's in that vein with those guys. And also talking about comfort music, if you've not heard Camel before, there is something so warm about their sound. If you think of kind of Pink Floyd, like metal era, they kind of have that sound, but they jam on it a little bit more. It's a little bit more open, and they get into some more probably musically more complex things. They open it up a little bit more. Not the greatest vocals in the world, but it doesn't really matter because the music just sounds so warm and so amazing. But yeah, that's it. My 10, Parliament, 9, Willie Nelson, Redheaded Stranger, and 8 is Moon Madness by Camel.
I've always wanted to get into Camel. You know, you always hear about them, you read about them, and then sometimes every once in a while, a song might come out on like deep tracks or something like that. And so I'll probably start streaming them, you know, just to test it because every time I hear it, you know, I like it.
Yeah,
I
if you
would
like that
say
early Floyd.
Yeah, my biggest recommendation for Camel would be to check out their live album, Alive Record. That, especially the CD edition, covers the gamut of their 70s material.
Okay.
Because it's kind of like some of the other live albums from that era where, especially like expanded on a CD, the second disc of the CD is an entire one of their albums performed live, and it's one that's actually going to come up on my honorable mentions. I have a Camel album on my honorable mentions,
Nice.
but it's a really great live album, and it kind of shows exactly kind of like what Jimmy's talking about, where they even take some of the songs and jam on them even a little bit more live than in the studio. But yeah, they're a band that I don't think gets nearly enough love.
Yeah. Which is the album that kind of looks like a pack of Camel?
It's called Mirage.
Oh yeah, that's right. It is called Mirage. You're right. You're right.
That's a good album too. I mean,
Yeah.
I think Joe's spot on with the live record, but for studio albums, I think Mirage, Moon Madness, and Snow Goose are kind of the 3 heavy hitters.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Go. All right, Al. What's your 10-9-8?
All right. Well, Joe mentioned this one, and my number 10 is going to be Alice Cooper. Welcome to My Nightmare. He touched on it already. Yeah, it was his first go as a solo Alice Cooper, not Alice Cooper band. And I think it's most of you got Steve Hunter and
Dick Wagner,
right? You know, most of I think on the tour he took most of the guys that were in Lou Reed's band. You know, yeah, it's a really great one. It's about a kid named Steven that has nightmares throughout the album. Whatever, he does take weird detours. Only Alice does. So I don't have a hard copy of the album though. I do have it. I mean, I have it on cassette, but I don't have it with me. So yeah, there you go. So yeah, that's my number 10. My number 9 is gonna be and Joe covered this one too. It's Thick as a Brick by Jethro Tull. Yeah, I like Tull a lot actually, so I like a lot of it. But yeah, this is a true. I mean, it's one song, man. Split into 2. Thick as a Brick. So yeah, I love this one. This is a lot. Shit, man. If you love musicianship, man, there's a lot of great musicianship on here, man.
Martin Barr's so good.
Yeah. John Evan, Barrymore Barlow, Martin Barr, of course, who was with him forever. Now I've seen Martin Barr solo actually like twice because now he tours around and does like a solo. They play Jethro Tull music, which is cool. And I got to meet him once, so it was cool, So that's my number 9, and then my number 8. I'm going with Zappa, Joe's Garage. Yeah, it could be a little higher on my list, but yeah, Joe's Garage. I mean, I think it was a single album when it first came out, or so since then it's been issued as 1, 2, and 3, double CD, and it's quirky, just like Zappa would be, dude. It's just a concept album of a garage band.
Fucking dirty.
Fucking weird. I mean, what do you got on here? You got Chick Keep It Greasy. He played that. I heard Dweezil. It sucks, man. I missed Dweezil like weeks ago, or a week and a half ago, man. I had nobody to go with, and it was one of those nights. It was really shitty out too, like rainy, and I was like, do I really want to travel an hour to go? My wife actually, Tina, she offered. She's like, "Do you want me to go with you?" And I was just like thinking to myself, I don't know, subject her to 2 hours of Zappa music or whatever, But then again, after it happened, I'm like, you know what? She liked Dweezil anyway, so and it's an entertaining show. She probably would have been entertained, but alas, I didn't go, so I kind of regret it. now, but whatever, man. So mine, so that's so my number is 10. Pickles a Pig 9. Joe's Garage number 8.
You see, that's why I didn't go to mine on the 15th of January. I didn't have anyone to go with,
And
and I didn't want to go by myself.
it's not that I haven't gone to concerts by myself. I have.
I have too, but I just didn't want to.
But it was just one of those nights. It was still during the cold snap here. It was really cold out, rainy, and I was just like, I'm just gonna skip this one. So
All right, so mine 1098. I'm gonna go with a little history lesson on this one. Rick Wakeman, The Six Wives of Henry VIII,
Nice.
is what I'm gonna go with. I really like the backward where it gives you. Would you like for real? We talked about this. So the back tells you, the little bit of bios on each wife. So I always thought that was pretty cool. Styx, Grand Illusion.
yeah,
I wasn't too sure that this was that much of a concept album until I started to read more into it. And this is my favorite Styx album, so I'm going to go with Grand Illusion. And when y'all went, yeah, y'all went with Welcome to My Nightmare. I went with Billion Dollar Babies instead of Welcome to My Nightmare. The last album by the original band. So Billion Dollar Babies for me as my number 8. All right, Joe.
All right. So my number 7 is another band that I have a bit of a complicated relationship with. This is one of those bands where everyone on planet Earth says that they're one of the greatest bands of all time. And I don't quite agree. I like a lot of their stuff, but I've always been a little bit not as on the bandwagon with these guys as a lot of people are. But this is an album that I 100% agree is a masterpiece, and it is their best concept album, and I think that is greatly debated because one I think is more iconic than the other, but one I think is better than the other. And the one that I think is better is Quadrophenia. Yes, I just outed myself as not the biggest Who fan on the planet. I have a very complicated relationship with these guys. I think that their 60s material is utter dreck. I think that every album they released in the 60s can kiss my ass. I think that they were much better in the 70s than they were in the 60s. And even then, I don't think it's all that great. But Quadrophenia, I think, is a really, really great album. And, I mean, stuff like The Real Me, The Punk Meets the Godfather, 515, Drowned, and then, of course, closing out with Love Reign Ormy. I mean, another one where, like, I don't get the concept at all, but I understand that there is a concept somewhere in there.
Yeah.
But I think that this is, of all of their albums with a concept to it, I think this was the best one. I think that Tommy, for me, is a tad overrated. I think that one's kind of where I like that album. I don't love it. That's the first album of theirs that I actually do like. But I think that this one is much better when it comes to concept albums released by The Who. Although I would have loved to hear Lifehouse if it was a concept album, because I mean the stuff on Who's Next is my favorite stuff they released. So
that's my favorite album by the Who's. Who's Next?
My number 6. This is actually surprisingly the first album that I wrote down on my list when I decided we were going to do 70s concept albums. And it's not an album that I think most of us would consider when we're making this list, because it's a musical, but it was a concept album first, starring the great Ian Gillan, Jesus Christ Superstar. One of my favorite albums of that era, the original album that the musical was based off of, Ian Gillan as Jesus, and just a really, really great performance by him. He let his vocals. This came out the same year as Deep Purple in Rock did, so he has that same kind of vocal quality on this album that he did on stuff like Black Knight and Child in Time. and he does some of those same screams on this album. And overall, this is, I think, is just a really great album that tells the story of the Passion narrative. And I think it's just a really overall really great album, turned into a pretty cool musical. But I think that this album was the best that it was ever realized. So that's my number 6 is Jesus Christ Superstar. And my number 5, another band that we talk about quite a little bit. I know our friend Jerry loves this band, and that is the Alan Parsons Project debut album, Tales of Mystery and Imagination. And the concept of this album is that it's all based on short stories and poems by Edgar Allan Poe. So you have stuff like Dream Within a Dream, The Raven, Telltale Heart, Cask of Amontillado, Dr. Tar and Professor Feather, and then the entire side 2 is Fall of the House of Usher. Just a really, really great kind of progressive synthesizer-y concept album based on Edgar Allan Poe. Has guest performances. Orson Welles is on here. Arthur Brown's on here. Just some really cool stuff. And just a really kind of cool topic for their first album. All their albums in the 70s were concept albums. But this one's my favorite, and it's all Edgar Allan Poe, and me being the kind of literature nut that I am, that is why I picked this one. So that was my 7, 6, and 5 is Quadrophenia, Jesus Christ Superstar, and Tales of Mystery and Imagination.
Nice. I'll get to that later. But so my number 7, I'm going to go with Electric Light Orchestra, El Dorado, their first concept album. And again, kind of going along with what Joe says, I think the concept is not the forefront of what makes this record great. It's the music, supposedly about a guy who goes through all these different worlds through a dream. And I'm sure there were lots of hallucinogenics, you know what I'm saying.
Ingested.
Involved. Yes. Involved in the making of the record. But man, Jeff Lynne is just brilliant. You talk about kind of taking, what the Beatles did in the 60s and bringing it into the 70s and having just that wonderful ELO sound that just is ELO. Nobody else sounds like them, and they're brilliant.
Nobody else.
So I intentionally, for my number 6, grabbed 2 albums because I knew Joe was going to mention one of these 2, and he did. So instead of going with Tales of Mystery and Imagination, I'm going to go with I, Robot by the Alan Parsons Project.
Great album.
Oh, so good. Yeah. So good. Those are my 2 favorite Alan Parsons Project albums.
Mine
but
too.
All about technology. This is the first one I got. It's, I wouldn't want to be like you. Just so many great songs. What were you going to say, Al?
No, I said it's so ahead of its time.
Mm-hmm.
In concept and,
yeah.
Also.
And it just sounds so good. I mean, you're not going to have an album with Alan Parsons' name on it and it not sound absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And then number 5, right?
Mm-hmm.
5.
Yeah, 5. I messed myself up by grabbing 2 records. I'm going to go with Gentle Giant, 3 Friends. And this band is not for everybody. I'll just say it right here and right now. Most people are probably not going to like Gentle Giant, and that's okay. They're weird. They're extremely progressive. It's complicated. It doesn't naturally flow to the ear. You know what I mean? It just doesn't have that, like the Beatles. You just pick it up and it's automatically melodic. This is just weird, complex time changes. You got guys switching instruments in the middle of songs. But when you do get them, they're great. They're so weird. But this album, I do know the concept. 3 friends. It's about 3 friends in school. And it kind of goes through their life and how one ends up working kind of a labor job. Another one ends up working kind of in the middle class. And the third one ends up becoming like a CEO of a major corporation, and how they were three friends when they were in school, but that really was the only time they were friends because life took them all into these different eras and just, as life does. But brilliant record, brilliant musicians, and if you like really weird, complex music, then you might like Gentle Giant.
I never dove into that, man, but I'm curious to listen to some of their stuff. So
It's
I like weird shit, bro. I like
yeah.
I got that stuff. So it's fun. I can listen to prog and then fucking listen to punk. I'm all over the place, man. It's crazy.
Same. They're I would probably start with maybe Octopus or maybe The Power and the Glory.
Yeah, their album covers are pretty quirky too, man.
They really are. They really are. And there's different ones for the US. This album originally, this is the UK cover.
Oh, okay.
Originally, when this came out in the US, it was the exact same cover as the first album.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you had two albums with the exact same cover, but they were two different records. So talk about confusing for an audience. So, but yeah, Alan Parsons or El Dorado, ELO, iRobot, and Three Friends by Gentle Giant.
All right, man.
Wow, they've been recording for a while. That album you were talking about, was that really released in 2011?
Which one?
The Three Friends.
Mm-mm.
No, it was released. They broke up in 1980.
Yeah,
it was probably 71, 72. They broke up in 1980. So they re-released that in the US, and that's probably when.
72. Okay, I see it now.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Just a question because I never, delved that much, so now I know where their stuff was. Okay.
You got it.
All right, Al.
Joe touched on this one, so my number 7 is going to be Quadrophenia by The Who. So, the story is it's really the mods versus the rockers. It's really kind of like the concept of this. The guy in the story is a mod, and he goes through all this stuff and listens to scuffles and all sorts of shit through life. I mean, that's kind of the concept of it, kind of a rough kind of street kind of thing, So I do love the sound a lot. I saw the tour where they were playing this whole thing in its entirety. It was really good. It was probably like 15 years ago already, But it was great to see them. And now I saw when I saw Pearl Jam close down Philly Spectrum. They did like a run of shows there, and I saw one of the shows, and one of their encore songs was "Love Rain Over Me," their cover of it. I thought it was really cool, man. Like especially live, man. It really came over the crowd. Like really, it was pretty emotional actually, because they were going to mow down the Philly Spectrum, which has a lot of history. That building. So
right.
But yeah, so my number 7 is Quadrophenia. My number 6. Probably my most underrated album on here, and probably a band that a lot of people have never really heard of, but a friend of mine who played in a band together, and he was really a big fan of this band and turned me on to them. And this is their debut album. It's by Nectar, Journey to the Center of the Eye. Mm-hmm. Basically, the concept of this is it's an astronaut on his way to Saturn, but he encounters aliens who take him to their galaxy and kind of infuse him with all this like knowledge and stuff like that. It's really, if you like space rock, it's really more kind of like, dude. I mean, this is actually a super audio CD. It has a mix on here, 5.1 surround mix, and if you really have like an immersive, like you put this on, bro, and it's like it takes you on a trip. They're pretty. If you like kind of like a space rock kind of Hawkwind and early Floyd and all that kind of shit, this is the band for you, Nectar.
Mm-hmm.
Nektar. This is their first album, Journey to the Center of the Eye. They have like great albums after this one, but this is their debut. So that's my number 6. That's probably my most underrated one on my list. So,
Yeah.
And my number 5 is going to be this one here, Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, Genesis. I have this Genesis box set here. This is real expensive to get now.
Oh yeah.
So you open it up, and it's their albums from the Peter Gabriel era. The only thing it doesn't have is the very first one. It doesn't.
And that's okay.
That's not yeah, from Genesis to Revelation. That's not in here, but it does have a disc in here too that has some rarities and stuff on it, which is really cool. It got a cool book, and then each of these albums are they're 2 discs. So the first disc is the CD remaster of the album. The second one is a DVD audio that has surround mixes of each album. So this has a surround mix of the Lamb Lies Down. I never actually sat down and listened to this in surround yet. I want to I still haven't set up my complete system here in my house yet. I got to get on it, but yeah, this has from Trespass to Lamb Lies Down. Trespass was the first one, right? Was their second album, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Right here. Well, this is a great box set, and I got this for $25, dude. This thing goes for hundreds of dollars now. It's insane. It's insane how much. Like I got it like some guy with that. The Steve Hoffman Music Forum. I go on there all the time. I don't know if you go on there, Joe.
Yep.
Okay. I never even knew you were on there. I don't even know your handle on there or whatever. But I'm Modern Day Warrior on there. I posted on there for years. They have like a classified section where people sell stuff if you want to buy it. And the guy put this up and he's selling $25. I jumped right the fuck on it. I mean, at that time the prices weren't sky high yet, but it wasn't like any. I mean,
that thing went for like $100 retail originally.
It's regular, so I'm like $25. And I didn't have any of the Gabriel era albums on CD, so I'm like in one full swoop, I got them all for like $25. So. And now, like, if I want to sell this, I can probably get $500 for this thing, dude. Like,
yeah, mainly just because of those DVDs and stuff.
Yeah, the surround mixes and all that.
Yeah.
But going back to the concept thing, yeah, this is my. So what were we at? 5, right?
5.
Yes, Quadrophenia, Nectar, Journey to the Center of the Eye, and Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, which is the last one with Gabriel. He went out with this big story. You know, it sucks. I mean, I don't know, man. Did Gabriel ever, in the early years of his touring, did he ever do any of the Genesis stuff? Or did he completely left that behind?
He did the title track a few times.
Yeah.
To Lamb Lies Down.
That's neat, though, man. I mean, he completely left Genesis, like, kind of behind, man, like when he went solo, you know?
Because there's a video on YouTube of him on, like, one of those German TV shows in like '78, doing the song "Lamb Lies Down on Broadway" with Tony Levin and all those guys.
Yeah.
But that was like the only one he ever did.
Yeah,
live.
Because really, if you think about Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, it was really a Peter Gabriel concept. And I think Tony Banks wasn't happy about it, but he doesn't talk. I don't think he ever talks too fondly about the album, but But that was their last one with Peter Gabriel before, he went off and did his own thing. So, but that's my 3. Go ahead, Andy.
Yeah, my 3. One of them in here y'all have already spoken about, but we're going 765.
765. Yep.
7. I'm going with Jackson Browne, Running on Empty. Absolutely love this album.
Mm-hmm.
It tells the tale of a rock and roll band on the road, their life on the road. I mean, we've heard that a million times, but man, the way Jackson Browne does it, just perfectly done. Such a good songwriter. And then of course,
I was gonna say most of the songs on that album were recorded live at my local venue.
Live on the road.
Cool.
They were recorded at Merriweather Post Pavilion. The song "Running on Empty," the Loadout, and "Stay" were recorded at Merriweather Post Pavilion. A couple other songs on there were recorded there, and that's where I see a ton of shows there. That's where M3 is every year.
That's where M3 is, yeah. And also a couple of
Yep.
Backstage and hotel rooms and stuff like that. Of course, y'all, we're talking about this one. We're talking about Quadrophenia. A whole lot better than Tommy. Tommy is so boring.
I think Tommy is better live. Actually,
Yes.
I always thought the live version of that album was way better.
Oh yeah, you get the Isle of Wight CD. Oh yeah.
But
Sparks.
Yeah.
a really neat book to it as well.
Mhm.
That came with it. The I do like their early stuff too. Though I do like a lot of Who. I'm a Who fan. I like them. And then Jimmy, you went with the Redheaded Stranger. Good album. But I'm going to go with Phases and Stages
Great album.
by Willie.
Yeah.
This one here tells a story about a divorce. The side one is the woman's point of view. Side two is the man's point of view.
Didn't you guys do a whole episode on that?
Yeah, back when we had a segment called guest pick, and we would let a guest pick the album. We went track by track, and this was Edwin Canastrosi's pick.
Yeah.
Was this one here? I don't think Al was able to make that show. It was just
I wasn't on that one.
Yeah, it was just me, Edwin, and Kate. So, Bloody Mary Morning. It's a great song. I love that song. But side one is the woman's side, and then side two is the man's side. So side one starts off with washing the dishes, walking, pretend I never happened, which is a song that was released as a single. Sisters coming home, and down at the corner beer joint is when she meets another dude at this beer joint. I mean, it really is very specific of a concept album. It tells a story. You can see it in your head. And then his side, he goes with Bloody Mary Morning, no love around. I still can't believe you're gone. It's not supposed to be that way, and ends with Heaven and Hell. So, I was kind of iffy about putting this album on here, but since Joseph did Jesus Christ Superstar, I'm going to go with War of the Worlds. This is a really good album. Of course, we know the stories, and you had mentioned Orson Welles. Well, here we go again. My uncle actually turned me on to this, and of course, this has David Essex, Jason Hayward from Moody Blues, Phil Lynott is on here as well. Richard Burton is on here. I think he's the he's one of the narrators. So if y'all aren't too familiar, of course we've all seen the movie with Tom Cruise. Well, except for me, but I'm pretty sure a lot of people have. But the War of the Worlds is my number 5. All right, guys, 4, 3, 2.
All righty. You were talking about all the different Who albums, and I wanted to say my controversial opinion about the Who, aside from me not being a huge fan of them, is that actually my second favorite Who album after Who's Next is Face Dances. That is my second favorite Who album.
Wow,
It's one of the only Who albums that I actually like front to back. So
I like that album.
That's my controversial opinion for the day. I love that album. So my number 4 is
Kenny Jones will be happy to hear that.
He would be happy to hear that. Now, I think his drumming is not the best part of that album, but I think it's a good album.
He's a great drummer, though. But
he is. I mean, you listen to the Faces stuff that he did.
Yeah, but Pete dumbed them down on those albums, man.
Yeah. So my number 4 is the all-time classic, David Bowie, Ziggy Stardust, and Spiders from Mars.
Yeah.
I mean, just a absolute classic. 5 Years, Moon Age Daydream, Starman, Lady Stardust, Star, Suffragette City, Rock and Roll Suicide. Just so many amazing songs on this album that just paint this picture of, like, a couple of the albums we talked about so far is just the rock and roll lifestyle almost. Just kind of that using this kind of otherworldly figure of Ziggy Stardust to illustrate the rock and roll lifestyle. Just a really, really cool album. One of many David Bowie personas. and eras and stuff, and just one of my favorite David Bowie albums. So that's my number 4 is Ziggy Stardust.
Yeah.
My number 3, it's not higher than 3, is The Lamb. If it has not already come out or whenever it comes out, you'll hear my reasoning for why this is not higher than number 3. A certain person on this panel might disagree with me vehemently on audio that the ending is great. I don't necessarily think so. I think this album kind of peters out towards the end a little bit, but disc 1 of this album is possibly the greatest thing that Genesis ever recorded, in my opinion. Disc 1 of this is just an absolute masterpiece. Disc 2 has some really high points, but also I think just kind of gets a little too full of itself at some points, and there's just a little too much droning instrumental for me on disc 2. But still, that doesn't take away from the fact that this is one of the greatest concept albums of the 70s. So that's my number 3. And then my number 2, Al already mentioned this one as well, Joe's Garage. The last Frank Zappa album of the 70s. This was the album that he closed out his most prolific decade with.
Oh, yeah.
And so to clarify, Al, you kind of mentioned how this was originally released. Originally, this was released as Act 1 as a single album, and then Acts 2 and 3 as a double album were released a couple months later.
Okay.
So it was always a 3-album set, but he released the first album at one point, and then a couple months later released the second 2 as a double set.
Yeah.
So I think even the original pressing on CD was Act 1 and then Acts 2 and 3. So like originally Act 1 was this cover, and then Acts 2 and 3 was this cover. So what's the back cover of the CD was originally the front cover of Acts 2 and 3. And then of course they condensed it onto 2 CDs instead of 3. If you get the vinyl, the 180 gram, it's 3 vinyls still. But yeah, just another one where the concept is just absolutely insane. Living in this kind of future where you don't have sex with humans, you have sex with robots. that's what you do. And
you don't want it to hurt when you pee.
But you don't want it to hurt when you pee. And you don't want to use your robot too much, because then the robot might malfunction. And you might go Yep, and you might go to jail for making a mess in the gears of your robot and end up having to do all kinds of things in jail. And there's a reason why the song is called Dong Work for Yuta. Yeah, it's just it is an insane album, but there's a ton of catchy songs on here. I mean, Keep It Greasy is catchy as hell. Stick It Out, Catholic Girls, the song Joe's Garage is a classic. Why Does It Hurt When I Pee is iconic. And then of course you get all this stuff, this weird stuff on the first like 3 or 4 sides of the album. And then the last side of the album just gets this weird existentialism thing going on.
Watermelon and Easter Hay.
Watermelon and Easter Hay, Little Green Rosetta.
Yeah.
Where it just like Packard Goose. Basically everything from once he gets outside of prison. So Outside Now, He Used to Cut the Grass, Packard Goose, Watermelon and Easter Hay, Little Green Rosetta is all just this like existentialism with these amazing guitar solos going on. Some of the best guitar solos that Frank ever recorded. All on this like one side of vinyl, where like all like the first like 5 sides of vinyl were all these like novelty songs with the weird lyrics and the catchy choruses with all the background vocals.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden he's just like, oh yeah, plus I'm one of the world's greatest guitar players too. So I'll slide that in on side 6. But yeah, Joe's Garage is just iconic. So that is my number 2.
That could have been higher on my list too, but yeah. Great.
Might as well just continue on that point, because my number 4 is also Joe's Garage. And I can't say anything more about it than what you guys did, other than the guitar playing on Watermelon and Easter Hay is just stunning. It's amazing. So yeah, that's my number 4. Number 3, also mentioned, going with the iconic Quadrophenia. Yeah, I also agree that it's their best concept album, and depending on the day, it's my favorite Who album. Ant Whistle on the Real Me is just. I mean,
Oh, he's a god.
if he's not in your list of top bass players of all time, I really don't understand what you're listening to,
Yeah.
because that,
He's a
I mean,
machine.
it's basically a bass solo with a song built around it, and Love Rain O'er Me is one of the greatest vocal performances
Yeah.
of the 70s. I mean, Roger, like, he literally leaves nothing. He gives everything that he has on that performance, and you can hear him straining at certain points, and it's just so good, so emotional. My number 2 and my number 1, I really, they could be interchangeable.
We're gonna save that. So
Yeah, I'm just saying that my number 2 could
okay.
just have easily been my number 1. So it was really hard for me to choose which is which, but it just depends on the day. But I'm going Thick as a Brick as well. I am a huge Tull fan.
I love Toll, man.
Yeah, that's the first album with Barrymore Barlow, and I've sung his praises on here before, but that guy's one of the best drummers ever. It just, and you can hear it on there. And I love Martin Barr. I love Ian Anderson's tongue in cheek, his cheekiness. That's really all it is, and it's there pretty much on every Toll album, but he's got it on here in spades. And, but yeah, it's that last section of the album is some of the greatest music ever made. If you get the last 2 to 3 minutes of that record, the music is just out of this world, and that band was so good. So yeah, that's it for me. 4 is Joe's Garage, 3 Quadrophenia, 2 Thick as a Brick.
All right, man. My number 4, as Andy looks around. No, man. I'm going with Ziggy Stardust. Yeah. Yeah, classic, man. I had my daughter listen to this like last year, and she really got more into Bowie, man. We went to go see a Bowie tribute and everything, and it was really awesome. And David Brighton was the guy that did the Bowie tribute. And he does like different eras of like Bowie. He starts off with like, the Ziggy Stardust persona and that early 70s stuff, man. Then he goes into the later 70s stuff where he's like, more of like the Blue-Eyed Soul kind of, the Berlin period, kind of all that kind of mixed in there. And then into the 80s, obviously, with like the more kind of commercial, but where he's wearing like the suits and all that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, this one, man, it's classic. I mean, Joe covered it good already, all the songs and stuff. So, and Mick Ronson, man, he's awesome on here. So
Added so much to that band, so much.
Yeah, it's funny, man. Like that, and that tribute they had the one guy, he looked like Mick Ronson and everything. I was like, what? I mean, they're really like paying tribute, So that's my number. What was that? 4. Number 3. I don't have a physical copy of the album here with me. I don't have it on vinyl. I have it on CD, but it's away in storage. But it's Pink Floyd Animals. I got to go with that one. That's my favorite Pink Floyd album, actually. Based on George Orwell's Animal Farm, basically, But yeah, is that the remastered one?
Yeah, it is.
That's the 2018 remix.
Yeah.
I need to get they put out kind of a remastered, like a box with like a surround and all that. So
Yeah.
it might be. I don't know if it's expensive to get now or not, but
I got the cheap one though.
yeah,
I got the 1-disc one.
that's a remix too, right? Like
Yeah.
a remix. I haven't heard that, man. I didn't even.
I've heard a lot of good things about it.
It's my favorite Floyd album, and I didn't buy that when it came out. I go figure.
It's so
I think because I was in the middle of the move, and I just wasn't buying a lot of things, and stuff, shit like that. So
it's so cool because you're so used to hearing Animals.
Yeah,
because we've heard it a million times, and then you hear the remix, you're like, Wow, I never noticed
It puts
that.
a fresh coat of paint on it, I'm sure.
Yeah, like, oh,
You probably
wow.
hear things you probably didn't.
It looks like the Blu-ray audio of that with the Atmos mix and the 5.1 surround sound is only like $25.
Oh, cool. All right. I think there was like a deluxe box.
Probably.
I don't really need to get that though, but I just want a Blu-ray of the remix of the album and the surround and stuff. That's what I'm really into. So, my favorite. I mean, yeah, again, George Orwell, Animal Farm, but it could be interpreted as a political angle. It can be interpreted as just Roger kind of like brings his whole cerebral kind of thing, like where you can kind of interpret it a whole bunch of different ways, But basically, he's just sheep, dogs, and pigs, like grouping people into like three groups, basically. And that's not my favorite David Gilmour playing is on that album, man. He's just on fire. It was like I think they got ignited kind of by the punk movement a little bit,
Oh yeah, they did.
And
I think the tension that was going on between he and
really started showing on that.
Yeah. I almost feel like it pushed them.
Yeah.
Like I must feel like the friction made them a little edgier.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah, you're right, man. Because when I think of Van Halen and like Dave and Eddie button heads during like Fair Warning, kind of brought out an anger like in that album as well. Like Ed's playing it's almost kind of like more ferocious in a way. Like not that he wasn't ferocious on the first couple albums, but
it's an angry album. I mean, it is.
So Animal is my number 3, right?
Yep.
3, yeah.
All right, I'm cheating on number 2 because I have to, but they're not concept.
It's not a concept album, Al. It's not.
I'm putting the two together, and it makes a concept.
It makes a partial concept album.
Yeah, I don't care, dog. Fuck it. I'm cheating. Cygnus X1, Book 1 and 2. You put them together, it can make an album. So
hey, it's your show.
I don't give a shit. I'm putting them in there.
Yeah.
On my iTunes, I actually have that on my iTunes. The two of them together.
So that concept, we can make a show on concept sides, and there could be a lot of albums on there.
Well, Rush released 3 in a row.
Well, yeah, but I mean, there's a lot of other bands too. King Crimson, and yes, the list could go on and on. You know what I mean? So, but I'm combining Cygnus, the 2 books, and it makes an album. So I can pull out the record store day album.
That's true.
I thought you were going 2112.
Because it's not a true concept album. It's a side, And I know those 2 are sides and stuff, but it's a continuation of a story. So it really could make an album. So that's my number 2.
Equal up to an album time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's my number 2. So I had, what did I have? I had Ziggy, I had Animals, and I have A Farewell to Kings and Hemispheres together.
You have the Cygnus X1 concept album.
The Cygnus X1 concept, yes. You go through a black hole, and you come out the other side, and your brain splits into 2 sides, and there's wars between them,
and then at the end of it all, somehow you end up in a forest.
Yeah, exactly.
Having hobbit sex.
According to Jerry Soupy.
Well, that's the trees, man. That's a whole different.
That's a whole
That's the forest you end up in.
Hit his head on that one. I don't know.
I was looking around, and I was because I knew I had this somewhere, but it wasn't on my desktop because I was counting albums and I counted one twice. But number 4 is going to be Ziggy Stardust and Spiders from Mars. I'm not that much into Bowie, but this is just an amazing album.
Yeah,
it is hard not to put it on here, especially.
I was almost going to pick Diamond Dogs.
That's another great one.
Good one.
But ultimately I went with that one. That's the bit more of an iconic one.
Yeah, and then of course y'all have mentioned these.
Yeah.
Acts 1, 2, and 3.
That's cool. You got the 2. You got the different albums, the vinyl.
Yeah, I got the volume 1 and then the 2 and 3. And so my back is different. It's all pink for the acts 2 and 3, and then act 1 is just you know, the moped. Um, we've already gone over the story, so I'm gonna leave it at that. My number.
Joseph covered it in quite very nice detail there.
Yes, thank you very much for that, Joe. And in fact, this is how Joe started it. I got it at number 2, Desperado by the Eagles.
That early Eagles stuff is great, man.
It is
It
amazing.
is.
I love the early albums.
Mhm.
I don't get me wrong. I like when Joe Walsh came in, but those early ones, man, there's something about it, like that album, man. I could put that on. I mean, I didn't put that on my list.
Man. Yeah.
Huh?
It's
What's
the
that?
feel of their early albums.
Yeah.
They're so good. But I do prefer now Hotel California is my favorite album by them. Yeah, I mean beginning to end it's perfect.
Yeah.
But this is my number 2. Easily my number 2.
Now, there's some people actually consider Hotel California a concept album as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Kind of
thought
a
about
loose-
that too.
Yeah.
But I couldn't connect the story.
It's very loose.
It's more of like a thematic kind of
Yeah.
thing, I think.
Yeah.
Like because honestly, like I mean, like a thematic, like because I can kind of like Kiss's Destroyer, right? Thematically, there's certain things in there in that album that kind of connect, in a way. It's not a concept album, but I don't know. It's just the feel of the album, the way it flows, kind of like thematically. There's a certain theme to it. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's just my opinion of it. Maybe it's a Bob Ezrin thing. He brings these effects in there, and his production kind of makes it a bit more cinematic in a way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but I got a little off topic there. But yeah.
But when I was reading about Desperado, I was surprised. But then it brought back to me. I remember Desperado wasn't even a single. It wasn't released as a single.
Oh no!
No.
Great song though.
Yeah, great song.
It was on their first greatest hits.
I love Tequila Sunrise on there. I love
Tequila Sunrise.
Yeah.
It is a great song. But what got me into that album was when I was a kid. My mom had the Eagles Live 80.
I got that
on 8
So
track.
good.
But Saturday Night was on there, and I absolutely love that song. And if you listen to that song, it fits in perfect in the album Desperado because it tells you, because it talks about, you can see the whole scene of the trains and the dusty roads and and the small town and stuff like that. So yeah, Desperado I think is a fantastic album. So I put that at number 2.
Wow.
Oberheim says the Lamb hands down is the number 1 concept album. All right, guys, now it's our turn to say what our number 1 concept album is of the 90s.
I don't know, man.
So let's get started.
I have a feeling here.
What's your number 1?
Isn't this where we came in?
That's what Jerry said that it should be.
He's right. I mean, The Wall, it's one of my favorite albums of all time. The perfect concept album, just engrosses you into it. You live in the atmosphere of the album. You just immediately, from in the flesh all the way through to Outside the Wall, you're just engrossed in this world, and the album just flows so well, and the soundscape and the kind of just atmosphere of the album, it's just iconic. And so many amazing songs on this. And it's one of those albums where there's so many little tracks that segue between songs that don't necessarily work on their own, but in the running order of the album are just perfect.
They have to be there.
Yeah.
So that is
put Vera in anywhere else.
No.
It is absolutely perfect and hits you emotionally exactly where it is for the 1 minute and a half that's there. It's absolutely perfect.
Yep. So that's my number 1 is The Wall.
All right. Well, I'm really bummed I left off Ziggy Stardust. Completely whiffed on that one. But there's one album that was intentionally left off uh, my list. And with that said, my number one is The Lamb Lies Down
There you
on Broadway.
There you go.
I mean, in Joe, you're right. The second half of that does fall off a bit, but on the strength of In the Cage, that is so good, and particularly the live version on Seconds Out is just so potent.
Yeah.
But man, I adore this album, and it's interesting because Genesis is one of those bands that I really didn't get into probably until my mid 30s, and because I always grew up listening to, I grew up in the 80s, and Phil Collins was everywhere. You know what I mean? And I wanted Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, Metallica, all that stuff in the 80s, and I had no time for Invisible Touch or any of that stuff. And it wasn't until later in my life that I got back and I was like, okay, this is really great music. And then someone let me borrow a copy of The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. And it was kind of one of those moments like, oh, this is Genesis. It's not that they didn't start off doing that really pop stuff, the real poppy stuff. So, yeah, Lamb Lies Down Broadway is far and away my number one.
There's a comment on here, Mega Jeff's Rock Hard Vinyl. I follow his channel, actually. Pretty cool dude. He says, I'm one of those weird people who have never heard The Wall, only the hits on the radio, never the album. Well, my friend,
you need to fix that like now.
And on that note, my number one is The Wall. This is an original pressing too. It was my sister-in-law actually gave this to me, and yeah, Evan has her. She even wrote her name, Marianne, in that corner there. But this is an original pressing. I do have the remastered one too, but the original doesn't have Pink Floyd on it at all. It just has The Wall. I think it had a sticker like on when you bought the album, the plastic on it, but when you took it off, But yeah, what's else to say about the album? I mean, Joseph pretty much covered it. Don't listen to this album when you're depressed. I think I think you should not listen to this album when you're depressed. You know what I mean? Because it's a depressing album, dude. Really, if you really think about it, thematically, conceptually, it's just pretty fucked up, man. Jeff says I'm more like Jimmy, an '80s metalhead, and just never still have never gone back to Pink Floyd. Sorry. So that's cool, man. So one day, man, throw it on, man. See what you think of it, Jeff. So check out Jeff's channel, man. Mega Jeff's Rock Hard Vinyl, man. It's cool.
I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, I would definitely check that out.
I remember, being in the vinyl community thing. There was like always contests going on, win vinyl, and I was trying to get my subscriber numbers up, and that was kind of a good way to kind of like, hey, if you do, I didn't do many of them, but it was like thing where I'd give away a thing like you have to do a contest. Like when I would get up to 1,000 subscribers, then I'd pick like a name out of my hat or some shit, people who entered like a contest, I gave away a vinyl or something like that. But I know Jeff, I've done a lot of those things. He's in very immersed in the vinyl community, so it's cool that you're on here, Jeff. Nice to see you. I got to get you on it. We got to get you on a show one day, actually. So,
what's Jeff's channel's name again?
Mega Jeff's Rock Hard Vinyl.
Okay, I'll go follow him after.
If you look in the comments, like if you go on my stream of this, and you just look in the comments, you'll see his comment on there. So
awesome. I'll go follow him as soon as we're done.
All right, so that's my number one. Go ahead, Andy.
Yeah,
take it home, man.
I'm sorry, Jimmy. You're gonna be odd man out. The Wall.
Well, I usually am.
As the concept
when it comes to that record.
What is really good about this as well is that it sticks to the storyline. It really does. There's so many concept albums.
They made a movie about it.
Story. This one hammers home the story. and it makes the story more intense. So if you're gonna hear this album, you do need to hear it from beginning to end, because then the concept of it does build up. Um, I don't think it's a depressing album. A lot of people think it is, but it does tell a depressing story. But it's scary, it's haunting, and it's beautiful all at the same time. So The Wall and side four. It took me a while to get into side four, which is the trial, because it's so weird, but it does get there though. All right, guys. Honorable mentions, Joe.
All right, so my list of honorable mentions.
Yeah.
A couple of bands that I picked ones from. Alice Cooper, I also went with From the Inside. A couple albums after Welcome to Nightmare, a really cool story about a mental institution. The Camel album that I had on my honorable mentions was The Snow Goose, which is an all-instrumental album because they got sued by the author of the short story that it was going to be based on. So they had to take all the lyrics off of it, and it turned into an instrumental album. So it's a concept album that is all instrumental because they got sued and had to remove the lyrics. My other belly pick was going to be Diamond Dogs, like Al said. That was on my honorable mentions. Like I said at the beginning, I had two Western-themed options. I went with Desperado, but my backup, and it was on my honorable mentions, was Tumbleweed Connection by Elton John. Like Jimmy, I had to have a P-Funk honorable mention, so I went with Mothership Connection. That was one of my honorable mentions. And then my last honorable mention was another one that Jimmy picked, which is El Dorado by ELO.
Nice. Well, I think you about covered my my honorable mentions there too. So, but I had Tumbleweed Connection, Tales of Mystery and Imagination. I had Animals on there. I don't hate Pink Floyd. I love Pink Floyd. There's just about 5 or 6 albums that I would grab before I grab The Wall. Just saying.
Gotcha.
It just, I never feel good after listening to that album. I always feel like
down.
Yeah, very. So it's just, I don't listen to it anymore.
See, I guess I'm the one person that I've never really felt that about this album.
No, I never.
Like, I get like that it's a messed up story. I've never felt like depressed after this album. I think it's a beautiful album.
I think so too.
I remember the last time I put it on, I was at work. I was sitting in my cubicle working on some policies, and I was almost done with side 1, and I was like, what am I doing? Why do I feel like this?
What am I doing?
Well, and if you've never lived in the Northeast, like the area I live in, it's just winter. It's just gray. Like It's just one of the grayest parts of the country. And so like you add that, it's like 3 p.m. It's almost dark outside, and like, why am I listening to this? Why am I doing this to myself?
What I was saying is that I'm not saying you get depressed listening to it, but don't listen to it when you are depressed.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the difference I'm saying. Like, it's not going to lift you up.
No.
You know, when I'm depressed, sometimes, you want to hear something fucked up. All I'm saying, but, I don't know, man. It's just, it depends on what mood you're in. It's,
Absolutely.
I mean, honestly, man, it is one of the greatest concept albums of all time, though. It is. I mean,
it's a brilliant piece of art.
I mean, there was a movie made out of it, and I mean, I saw that his production of The Wall a few times. And, I mean, just live with the whole Wall concept, and it was just unbelievable. I mean, I don't think I've ever witnessed another stage show like that.
Oh, I'm sure.
One of the greatest stage shows ever. I mean, you can have Kiss and all the fucking bombs, and that's a great stage show in itself. But this was like, you want to talk about a fucking stage show? It's like,
oh yeah.
I mean, just the whole concept. You're building a wall up between you and your audience as you're going on, and then at the end, you knock it down and shit. It's it's just crazy, man. I mean, we all feel isolated at one point in our lives, man. So.
Yeah, absolutely. The
I mean,
other records I was going to add was going to be
sorry.
Marvin Gaye. What's going on?
Oh yeah.
I mean, not too much you can say about that hasn't been said already. And Welcome to My Nightmare was my other honorable mention.
I gotta say, during the Roger Waters thing when he was doing the wall, the one point in the show where I got misty eyed. I mean, was when he was Bring the Boys Back Home, man. The whole kind of the war thing, and I was like, it hit me hard, dude. And I never served, but I know people who served, and I don't know, that just hit me, man. I was like, holy shit,
Yeah, he still does.
the images that he was showing and all that stuff. It was like, wow, So, I don't really have many honorables. I don't even think I have 5, but I'll throw in a passion play by Jethro Tull. The thing I like on this one is actually the early version of the album.
Yes.
Chateau Disaster. Was it Chateau
Disaster?
Yeah. It was heavier and it was actually like kind of more rocking. Ultimately, this is like a hit or miss album with a lot of fans. I mean, you want to talk about going real conceptual. I mean, it's like kind of goes over my head too, to be honest with you.
But, oh yeah.
Yeah, you see, I got that too. Okay, I got passion play.
Yeah.
So that's what
this is the deluxe version that has like the early version of the album and all that stuff. So yeah. What else? I don't really have anything else. I mean, you guys kind of touched. I mean, Diamond Dogs would be another one. Yes, Tales from Topographic Oceans. I don't know. Was never really big into into that album, but that's the only really true concept album they have. Honestly, but I think
and the concept is overinflated.
Yeah, it really
the concept is we're a very pretentious group of musicians. That's the concept.
That's not what the concept was.
That's what I get from listening to it. I love Ritual. You can have the rest.
I was never a huge fan of that album, but I mean,
the cover is so cool.
Andy can talk about what he has on his. So, go ahead, Andy. You can go, man, because I don't have
honorable mentions. Tales of Topographic Oceans. Okay, it's 4 songs on 4 sides, but each song has a reason. One side's all about enlightenment. Another one is all about religion, and I forgot what the other 2 were. But they all have a meaning, and when you look at the songs for each side, it can be overwhelming. But when you listen to it, it's cut into suites, so it's not like it's all one big long sound. To me, it's cut up. Also, I got Genesis, The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway as an honorable mention. Now, I do gush on this album quite a bit, and the reason why I didn't make my top 10 is because I'm just getting into this album. So if I did this maybe later on in the year or maybe next year, it would definitely be in my top 5. But right now, since I'm just getting into this album, I'm not quite to put into the concept albums that I have been hearing for so many years. And I'm like, that's about the only 2 that I got. I really didn't have that many honorable mentions. All right. Any parting words, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, thank you guys so much. This is really fun. I love talking about all these albums.
Yeah.
Really some of the classic albums of all time.
Yeah.
And then these artists in general, just the discographies that they are putting out in the 70s is just some top-notch stuff. So I'm really glad we got to do this, especially with you, this particular group of guys. I'm really glad we got to do this.
Yeah, it was awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, it was great. Thanks, Joe. Oh, well, Jimmy, you were chosen by Joe. I said, Joe, who do you want to be on here? He said, I got to have Jimmy.
Oh, thanks, man. Thanks, Joe. Well, I always appreciate you guys having me on, and it's, thank you so much for that. It's,
you're a great guest.
Well, I appreciate that. It's fun for me. I don't get to sit around and talk music too often with people who are of like mind and similar passion for music. So I really, really do genuinely appreciate it. So thank you guys. Thank you, Joe, for rallying for me to be on this episode. So thank you.
Well, he didn't have to rally too much.
Yeah.
Hey, Al, what's going on next week, man?
This is right up your alley. So,
Oh yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
and I can't recommend this album enough. Nectar.
Yes.
Turning
Yes.
this through the eye.
They're a great
Amazing
band.
album. They are a great
If you
band.
don't listen to anything out of my list, man, give this one a try. If you've never heard it.
That is a dark horse. That is a dark horse, and it's well worth it.
No,
That's a great call, Al.
So,
I second that.
So Andy, next week we're gonna do in the producer's chair.
Yep.
We each pick a producer, and we're gonna do a top 10 albums by said producer. Andy's pick. What's your pick?
I am doing Ted Templeman.
Ted Templeman. Mine's gonna be Max Norman. I have some guys in mind. Actually, Eddie Canestracci might be on because him and I went to the Kansas show together, and he had a good time, and he enjoyed him. He never knew much about Kansas, but he really enjoyed it. He said he was gonna deep dive into them. And I was like, cool, man, So, but he said he was interested in coming on the show, and I have another friend of mine that he might be interested in coming on too. So it'll be four people on here. So, but my producer I'm picking is Max Norman. He's done a ton of shit for a great album, man. And Ted Templeman, not only Van Halen, he's done a bunch of other shit. So.
Yeah, I saw that, and I'm not going to actually rank mine. I'm going to use mine as a chronological order to see how Ted grew, and what he brought into the world of rock.
Cool.
It's the way that he pushed the envelope and introduced us to his production work.
So that's going to be our show next week. I don't know. It might be. I was talking with Andy.
We're going to move it to Tuesdays.
Yeah, we're probably going to move our show to Tuesday nights. So
permanently
as a regular slot, So
nice.
So we're going to start that next Tuesday.
Yeah, next Tuesday. So, anyway, thank you guys for having me on. Andy, take us out, bro.
Yeah, thanks a lot, everyone out there for watching us. Thank you so much, Oberheim, and thank you so much, Omega Jeff. Check out his channel, like Al was saying. Hopefully, like Al was saying, maybe he might be interested in doing our show. We can find a topic for him. So thank you for everybody that watched. Thank you, Joe and Jimmy. Thanks for being with us.
And subscribe to Black Spitter Circle and
subscribe to Podcast Out.
Yeah.
And this will also be on Facebook. And also catch Joe and I tomorrow on the BS sessions, where we're going to be ranking our top 11 Super Bowl games. So that's going to be interesting. Again, I went in chronological order. It's hard for me to pick games.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Y'all take it easy. Thank you so much for watching. And keep them spinning out there. Take it easy.
Cheers.